The waves crashed against the research vessel's hull with unusual force. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge, his weathered hands gripping the railing as he watched another coastal evacuation on the ship's main screen. This was the third one this month, and it was only getting worse. "Captain, you need to see this." Tom, the ship's lead scientist, called from his station. His voice carried an edge that Walker hadn't heard before. The captain crossed the bridge, his boots making soft thuds against the metal floor. The readings on Tom's screen made no sense. Energy signatures pulsing from the deep, unlike anything they'd seen before. "How far down?" Walker asked, leaning closer to the display. "About 3,000 meters. But that's not the strange part." Tom pulled up another screen. "These patterns, they're organized. Too organized to be natural." Walker watched as the data streamed across the monitor. After 20 years at sea, he thought he'd seen everything the ocean could throw at him. He was wrong. The global maritime force vessel, Horizon, had been tracking unusual sea level changes for the past 6 months. Cities worldwide were flooding at an unprecedented rate. Miami, Bangkok, and Venice were already largely abandoned, but nobody could explain why the waters were rising so fast. Until now. "Send a probe down," Walker ordered. "I want visual confirmation." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, their best deep-sea probe was descending into the dark waters of the Pacific. The main screen showed its progress. 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, 2,500 meters. At 2,800 meters, the probe's lights illuminated something impossible. "What in God's name?" Tom whispered. The seawater was alive with tiny crystalline structures, each no bigger than a grain of sand. But they moved with purpose, forming and reforming into complex patterns. As they watched, the structures seemed to pulse with an internal light, sending out waves of energy that their instruments could barely measure. "They're some kind of organisms," Tom said, his fingers flying over his keyboard, "but they're not like anything we've ever seen. The energy they're generating, it's affecting water temperature, density, everything." Walker felt a chill run down his spine. "Are they responsible for the rising sea levels?" "Look at this." Tom brought up a global map, overlaying it with heat signature data from the past 6 months. "These things are everywhere, Captain. All the major oceans. And they're multiplying." The probe's camera caught something else. Larger crystalline structures rising from the seabed, like towers made of living glass. They pulsed with the same strange light as the smaller organisms. "Send this to command," Walker ordered. "Priority 1. Before anyone could move, every screen on the bridge flickered. The crystalline structures below pulsed brighter, and a deep humming filled the ship. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're picking up a signal. It's coming from down there." The humming grew stronger, and then, impossibly, words began forming on their main screen. Not in any human language, but somehow translating themselves as they watched. "TERRAFORMINGCEQENC 84% QOMPLET INDEGENUS surface AKTV DETTTV Adjuvesting Purotosios." "They're not just organisms," Walker said, his voice barely a whisper. "They're machines, or something in between, and they're changing our planet on purpose." The implications hit him like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't facing a natural disaster. They were facing an invasion, one that had been happening right under their noses, in slow motion, for who knew how long. "Send everything we have to command," Walker ordered. "And get me a secure line to the Science Council. The world needs to know what we're dealing with." As the crew rushed to comply, Walker looked back at the screen showing the coastal evacuation. Those weren't just refugees from rising seas anymore. They were the first casualties in a war humanity didn't even know it was fighting. The ocean around them suddenly seemed very dark and very alien, And somewhere in its depths, an intelligence was reshaping their world, one drop of water at a time. The tide was rising. But now, at least, they knew why. 3 days after the Horizon's discovery, Captain Walker stood in a packed United Nations emergency session. The room buzzed with nervous energy as world leaders watched the probe footage for the 100th time. "They're calling themselves the Depths," General Adams announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. And they finally agreed to talk. The main screen flickered to life. The crystalline structure they'd seen in the deep ocean appeared, but now it pulsed with patterns of light that formed into a roughly humanoid shape. The being called itself Core Mind, speaker for the Depths. "Your presence is unexpected." The alien's words appeared as text across the screen, accompanied by harmonic tones that made the windows vibrate. This world was marked uninhabited above the waterline. Walker stepped forward. They'd chosen him as humanity's representative because he'd made first contact. "We've been here for thousands of years," he said firmly. "This is our home." The crystalline figure shifted, its light patterns swirling faster. "Impossible. Our surveys showed no signs of advanced civilization. The surface was deemed suitable for conversion." "Conversion?" a scientist in the front row asked. "This world has optimal composition for our kind. We have spent 300 years preparing it. The process cannot be reversed." The room erupted in shouts and arguments. Walker raised his hand for silence. "You're saying you've been raising Earth's oceans deliberately?" "For 3 centuries. Correct. We seed worlds with our primary units, what you would call our children. They slowly adjust the chemical and physical properties of the target world's oceans. When ready, our main civilization arrives." General Adams stepped forward, his face red with anger. "And when exactly is this main civilization planning to arrive?" "The first settlement ships will emerge from Fold space in approximately 6 of your months." The room fell silent. Walker felt his throat go dry. "How many ships?" "The first wave includes 10,000 city vessels, each carrying 1 million of our kind." Quick calculations ran through Walker's mind. 10 billion new arrivals, all needing Earth's oceans. All those displaced humans from coastal cities weren't just refugees. They were the beginning of a planetary eviction. "We can't allow this," Walker said. "Billions of humans live near the coasts. Millions have already lost their homes. You have to stop the terraforming." The crystalline figure pulsed with new patterns. "Impossible. The process is self-sustaining now. And our people are already in transit. There is no reversal possible." "Then you're declaring war," General Adams growled. "War?" Core Mind's patterns shifted to sharp, angular shapes. "We do not wage war. We transform worlds. If your species cannot adapt, that is unfortunate. But we cannot halt a process 3 centuries in motion for a surface-dwelling species we did not know existed." Walker stepped closer to the screen. "We're not just surface-dwelling. We have submarines, underwater research stations. We can survive in the oceans too. Primitive vessels. They would not survive the final stages of transformation. The pressure changes alone. Then help us." Walker's voice carried across the chamber. "If you're so advanced, help us adapt. There has to be a way for both our species to survive." Core Mind's patterns froze. For several long moments, the chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the alien's presence. "You propose cooperation." The alien's text appeared slowly. "No species has ever suggested this. They either flee or fight." "We're different," Walker said. "We adapt. We survive. We find ways to make the impossible possible. Work with us." The crystalline figure's patterns began swirling again, faster and more complex. "Your proposal is interesting, but likely futile. The changes coming cannot support your form of life." "Let us try," Walker insisted. "What do you have to lose?" Core Mind pulsed once, brightly. "Very well. You have 6 months to demonstrate your species' ability to adapt. But know this, we cannot, and will not stop what has begun. The tide will continue to rise. As the alien's image faded, Walker looked around the chamber. They had 6 months to figure out how to survive an ocean world, or humanity would face extinction. The clock was ticking, and the water was still rising. In the month following first contact with the depths, the world changed more than it had in the past century. Dr. Kate Miller stood in her underwater lab, watching schools of fish swim past the reinforced windows. But it wasn't the fish she was interested in. It was the tiny crystalline structures floating among them. "Look at this," she called to Captain Walker, who had come to check on her progress. She pointed to her computer screen, showing waves of energy pulsing from the alien organisms. They communicate using electromagnetic fields. That's how they coordinate the terraforming. Walker leaned closer. "Can we disrupt it?" "Better." Kate pressed a button, and a low hum filled the lab. On the screen, the crystalline structures scattered like startled birds. "We can control where they go. The right electromagnetic frequency makes them avoid certain areas completely. We could protect our coastal cities," Walker said, his eyes lighting up with hope. "Some of them, yes. But there's a bigger problem." Kate pulled up another screen. "The depths aren't just raising the water level. They're changing the ocean's chemical composition. In 5 months, most of Earth's oceans won't support human life anymore." Before Walker could respond, alarms blared throughout the lab. Red lights flashed as a voice came over the speakers. "Warning. Pressure anomaly detected. All personnel to emergency stations." Kate rushed to her instruments. "They're accelerating the process. The depths must have detected our experiments." The lab's windows creaked under increasing pressure. Outside, the water had turned a strange luminescent blue. Countless crystalline structures now filled the water, all pulsing with the same rhythmic light. "Get everyone out," Walker ordered, but Kate didn't move. "Wait," she said, adjusting controls on her console. "I can try something." She activated the electromagnetic field generator at full power. The hum grew louder, and the water outside churned as the alien organisms reacted. But instead of scattering, they began forming patterns. "They're talking to us," Kate whispered. Words appeared on her screen. Resistance noted. Adaptation unexpected. Exploring alternative approaches. The pressure slowly returned to normal. Outside, the crystalline structures arranged themselves in a complex orbital pattern around the lab. "They're studying us," Kate realized. "Every time we adapt, they learn more about what we can do." Walker's radio crackled. "Captain, you need to see this. Global report coming in." On the main screen, news feeds from around the world showed similar scenes. Wherever humans had built underwater facilities, the depths were gathering to observe. Not attacking, not retreating. Watching and learning. "Don't you see?" Kate said excitedly. "This is our chance. They're curious about us. We're not just surviving. We're doing things they've never seen before." She pulled up data from other research stations. "Look here. The Japanese team found a way to desalinate water faster than the depths can change it. The Indian station developed new pressure-resistant materials. The Brazilian team created underwater farms that work even in the altered water conditions." "But is it enough?" Walker asked. "We've only got 4 months left before their main fleet arrives." Kate smiled. "That's the thing about humans, Captain. We do our best work under pressure." She pointed to the crystalline structures still orbiting the lab. "And I think our visitors are starting to realize that." She turned back to her computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. "We need to coordinate with all research stations, share everything we've learned. And most importantly, make sure the depths see all of it. You want to put on a show for them. I want to show them what humanity does best. Adapt, innovate, and survive. They think they're testing us." She gestured to the aliens outside. "Well, maybe we're testing them too." Walker watched as Kate sent out her message to research stations worldwide. Around the lab, The crystalline structures pulsed with new patterns, their light showing what almost looked like curiosity. The tide was still rising, but for the first time, it felt like humanity was rising with it. The massive underwater dome of New Atlantis took shape piece by piece beneath the Pacific Ocean. Captain Walker watched through the viewport of his submarine as construction robots worked tirelessly, guided by human operators from a control room 2 miles away. 3 months until the Depths fleet arrives, Tom said, checking his tablet. We're cutting it close. Walker nodded. New Atlantis was humanity's biggest gamble, the first permanent underwater city. Built using technology developed from studying the depth's crystalline structures, it would house 50,000 people at a depth of 1,000 meters. Status report from Dr. Miller. Walker asked. The electromagnetic shield is holding. No alien organisms within 5 kilometers of the construction site. Tom paused. But they're watching. Always watching. Through the murky water, Walker could see them. Thousands of crystalline structures hovering just outside the shield's range, their lights pulsing in complex patterns. Earth's unwanted terraformers, fascinated by their prey's refusal to give up. Captain, a voice crackled over the radio. We've got movement at the deep thermal vent. Something big. Walker rushed to the submarine's main viewport, near the ocean floor, where they'd tapped into a thermal vent for power. Something was emerging. A massive crystalline structure, larger than any they'd seen before, rose from the darkness. All units, hold position, Walker ordered. Maintain shield integrity. The structure kept rising until it towered over New Atlantis. It took shape slowly, forming into something that looked almost like a city. But alien, geometric, impossible. Words appeared on every screen in the submarine. We would observe your co-instruction methods. They're building their own city, Tom whispered. Right next to ours. Walker keyed his radio. Dr. Miller, are you seeing this? Seeing and recording. Kate's voice came back excited. Their construction method is amazing. They're using the same principles we are for pressure resistance, but their approach to energy distribution is completely different. The alien city grew faster than seemed possible, crystal forming upon crystal in a dance of light and geometry. Within hours, it matched New Atlantis in size. Your ADAPT ugly, Jesus, bar. Unexpected. The words appeared again. We would exchange G. Walker looked at Tom. Did they just offer to trade technology? Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the submarine. The thermal vent they'd been using for power was becoming unstable. Earthquake. Someone shouted. The whole sea floor is shifting. Walker watched in horror as cracks appeared in the ocean floor, threatening both cities. The thermal vent erupted, sending superheated water toward the alien construction. Without thinking, Walker grabbed the controls. All power to the electromagnetic shield, extended around their city. Captain, that'll drain our reserves. Do it. The shield expanded, its blue energy field stretching to encompass both human and alien structures. The superheated water hit the shield and dispersed. Inside the protected zone, both cities stood undamaged. For a long moment, everything was silent. Then new words appeared. You protected us. Why? Walker keyed in his response. Because that's what humans do. We protect life, whether it's like us or not. The crystalline city pulsed with new patterns. In our 1,000 years of colonization, no species has ever acted to preserve us at their own risk. Then you've never met humans before, Walker replied. We're full of surprises. The alien city's lights shifted, forming complex patterns that their computers couldn't decode. Finally, new words appeared. Perhaps. There is much we could learn from each other. Walker smiled. That's what we've been trying to tell you. Continue your construction, the depths commanded. We will assist. Your methods are primitive, but your principles are worth studying. As Walker watched, The two cities began growing together, human and alien technology merging into something entirely new. The tide was still rising, but now it was lifting both species toward a future neither had imagined. And somewhere in the darkness above, 10,000 city ships were approaching a world that was changing in ways their makers had never expected. Dr. Kate Miller hadn't slept in 2 days. She stood in her lab in New Atlantis, surrounded by screens showing data from the latest experiments. The Joint Human Depths Research Project was yielding incredible results, but time was running out. 2 months until the fleet arrives, she muttered, rubbing her tired eyes. And we still can't slow down the terraforming. Behind her, a crystalline structure floated in a containment field. Unlike its wild cousins outside, this one had agreed to be studied. Its lights pulsed gently as it watched her work. Your persistence is remarkable, it communicated through her computer. The depths had named this observer First Light, and it had become their primary liaison for scientific exchange. Remarkable won't save our coastal cities, Kate replied, studying new data. Then she saw something strange. Wait, what's this? On one screen, a pattern emerged in the sound wave analysis. Every time they tested certain frequencies, the wild organisms outside showed a brief disruption in their terraforming activity. First Light, Kate asked, how do your people communicate across long distances? We use crystalline resonance. All depths share the same basic frequency. Kate's eyes widened. Like a tuning fork. Tom. She called to her assistant. Get Captain Walker down here. Now. Within minutes, Walker arrived at the lab. Kate could barely contain her excitement as she explained her discovery. The depths use sound waves to coordinate their actions, she said. If we can find the right frequency, we might be able to create safe zones where the terraforming can't happen. First Light's patterns shifted rapidly. This would be uncomfortable for my kind, but not harmful, Kate pressed. Right. The crystalline being pulsed thoughtfully. Correct. It would prevent coordination but cause no damage. Walker leaned forward. Could we protect whole cities this way? Better, Kate said. We could create permanent human habitats both above and below the water, areas where we control the environment, while leaving other regions for the depths to terraform. She pulled up a global map. Look, we could save most major coastal cities, establish more underwater colonies like New Atlantis, and still leave plenty of ocean for the depths civilization. The arriving fleet expects a fully terraformed world, First Light warned. They may not accept this compromise. Then help us convince them, Walker said. Your people have learned about humans these past months. You've seen what we can do. Kate activated a sonic prototype she'd been working on. A gentle hum filled the lab, and outside the windows, the wild organisms scattered from a large area, leaving clear, normal seawater behind. It works, she breathed. We can actually do this. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout New Atlantis. Tom rushed into the lab. Captain, we've got trouble. The wild organisms, they're gathering. Millions of them. It's like they know what we're trying to do. Outside, the water had turned almost solid with crystalline structures, all pulsing with angry red light. The terraforming process accelerated dramatically, making the whole city creak under rapidly changing pressure. They react to protect themselves, First Light explained. A natural defense. Kate, Walker said urgently, how quickly can you scale up that sonic system? She was already moving. Give me an hour to modify the city's external speakers. But Captain, she paused. If we do this, we're not just experimenting anymore. We're directly opposing their terraforming. It could be seen as an act of war. Walker looked at First Light. What do you think? Will your people understand we're just trying to survive? The crystalline being's lights swirled in complex patterns before responding. Understanding is not guaranteed, but you have proven worthy of the attempt. Kate activated her city-wide sonic prototype as the pressure outside continued to build. They were about to find out if humanity's solution would work, or if they'd just started a war they couldn't win. The next few hours would determine if Earth could support two civilizations, or none at all. The sonic barrier around New Atlantis held for 3 days. Inside the shield, the water remained clear and normal. Outside, millions of crystalline organisms gathered like an angry storm, their lights pulsing with red and orange patterns. "They're trying to find a way through," Tom reported from his station. "The pressure on the shield is increasing." Captain Walker stood at the main window of the control room, watching the swarm. First light floated nearby, its patterns showing signs of distress. More are coming, the crystalline being warned. They see this as a threat to the entire terraforming process. "How long until they break through?" Walker asked. Kate checked her instruments. "The sonic barrier is holding, but our power systems are straining. Maybe 2 more days at this rate." Before anyone could respond, the entire city shook. Warning lights flashed as a deep rumble filled the water. "Underwater earthquake," someone shouted, bigger than the last one. Through the windows, they watched in horror as a massive crack opened in the ocean floor. Hot gases and magma began pouring out, creating a rising column of superheated water that threatened both the city and the gathered depths. "The sonic barrier," Kate yelled. "It's disrupting their ability to escape." Walker understood immediately. The crystalline organisms outside couldn't coordinate their movements to flee the danger. They were trapped by the very shield protecting the city. "Shut it down," he ordered. "Captain," Tom protested, "if we drop the shield, they'll die if we don't. Shut it down now." Kate rushed to her console and disabled the sonic barrier. The hum that had filled the city for 3 days fell silent. "You would risk your city to save them." First light's patterns showed confusion. "We're not just saving them," Walker said, watching as the crystalline swarm began to scatter from the rising hot water. "We're saving ourselves. Start emergency evacuation procedures." But before they could begin evacuating, something extraordinary happened. The fleeing organisms stopped. Then, as one, they turned back. "They are returning." First light's patterns shifted to show surprise. The crystalline swarm surrounded New Atlantis, but not with hostile red light this time. Their patterns pulsed with cool blues and greens. Then, moving in perfect coordination, they formed a massive barrier between the city and the underwater volcano. "They're protecting us," Kate whispered in awe. The crystalline barrier redirected the hot water away from New Atlantis, creating a safe channel for it to rise harmlessly to the surface. The city's sensors showed the temperature and pressure returning to normal levels. New words appeared on their screens. "Cooperation priority activated. Survival priority reacted." First light's patterns brightened. "They understand now. You chose to risk yourselves rather than destroy them. This changes everything." More messages appeared. "A fleet in notification sent. New parameters estabilization. Coexistence protocols initiated." "What does that mean?" Walker asked. "My people have never encountered a species that would sacrifice its own safety for ours," First Light explained. "The terraforming organisms are part of our collective consciousness. They felt your choice, felt your humanity." Kate's console beeped. "Captain, look at this. The organisms, they're changing their behavior. The terraforming process it's becoming more selective. They're leaving protected zones around all major human population centers." Walker watched as the angry swarm transformed into an organized network, working now to preserve human habitats while continuing their work in other areas. "The fleet will still come," First Light said. "But now they will come not as colonizers, but as neighbors. There is much we can learn from each other." Outside the windows, the crystalline barrier remained, its lights now pulsing in harmony with First Light's patterns. The tide was still rising, but now it carried with it something unexpected: hope. 1 month remained until the fleet's arrival, but for the first time, Both species looked forward to that day not with dread, but with anticipation. The day the Depths fleet arrived, Earth's skies turned to crystal. 10,000 massive ships emerged from fold space, each one a city-sized structure of living crystal that caught and scattered sunlight in breathtaking patterns. Captain Walker stood on the observation deck of New Atlantis with Dr. Kate Miller and First Light, watching the arrival through the reinforced dome above them. In the month since the volcano incident, their underwater city had grown to house over 100,000 humans, with more arriving each day. "They're beautiful," Kate said, watching the ships take position in Earth's orbit. "They are concerned," First Light communicated. "The world below is not what they expected to find." Instead of a fully terraformed ocean planet, the fleet found Earth transformed into something entirely new. Protected zones around human cities glowed with the soft blue light of sonic barriers, while vast stretches of deep ocean pulsed with the crystalline patterns of Depths territory. Between these regions, carefully maintained transition zones allowed both species to interact and work together. "Main Fleet is requesting direct communication," Tom announced from his station. The observation deck's main screen activated, showing a massive crystalline consciousness that identified itself as Elder Core, leader of the fleet. "This is unexpected." The Elder Core's words appeared. First Light, explain this divergence from standard terraforming protocols. First Light moved forward, its patterns bright and confident. "Respected Elder, I present Captain James Walker and Dr. Kate Miller of Humanity. They have shown us a better way." Over the next hour, they shared everything that had happened. The discovery of the sonic frequency, the volcano incident, and most importantly, the successful cooperation between humans and the Depths that followed. "You chose to risk extinction rather than destroy our terraforming units," Elder Core noted. "Why?" "Because that's not who we are," Walker replied simply. "Humans can fight when we need to, but we'd rather find a way for everyone to survive." Kate stepped forward. "We've learned so much from each other already. The Depths have helped us develop better deep-sea construction techniques, and we've shown them new ways to adapt and interact with surface environments." The Elder Core's patterns shifted through complex colors as it processed this information. "In all our history of world seeding, we have never encountered a species worthy of cooperation. Yet you have achieved in months what we thought impossible. Does this mean you'll accept our compromise?" Walker asked. "There's room enough on Earth for both our peoples." The massive crystalline consciousness pulsed with new patterns. "We will do more than accept. We will learn. You have shown us that adaptation is not merely a physical process, but a meeting of minds." First Light's patterns brightened with joy as the Elder Core made its declaration. "Let Earth become the first world of its kind. Not fully terrestrial, not fully oceanic, but a perfect synthesis of both. A world where two species can grow together." The fleet began to descend, not as invaders but as neighbors. Each ship took position near one of the transition zones, where they would build new cities that combined both human and Depths technology. "It's really happening," Kate said, watching the ships settle into Earth's oceans. "We did it." Walker smiled. "No, we did more than that. We didn't just survive. We showed them a better way. And in doing so," First Light added, "you have changed not just Earth, but the future of both our species." Outside, the tide continued its eternal rhythm, rising and falling in patterns that now carried meaning for two civilizations. Earth's oceans have become something entirely new, not a barrier between species, but a bridge connecting them. The human tide had met the cosmic tide, and together they had found their level.